I would even dare say I was asleep for the first 29 years of my life. From like 27 to 29, that's when all these things that we've been talking about, I began to fully acknowledge and willingly work through. And it's not that I completed that work in 2 years. It's just, it took that amount of time for me to become aware of my own shit, my own ego, my own self, the ego and shit and self of so many other people, and to go through, like I was saying earlier, the filtration of the community, to understand what it means to be able and to allow myself to love myself. And I couldn't have done that any sooner because I didn't know who I was. And I've said this before, like, how can you fully love someone if you don't know who the hell they are? So I think people listening, like, do you love yourself? And if not, do you know yourself? Start there. And that was the most important work that I needed to do.
That's Chase Chewning, and this is episode 296 of Wellness Force Radio.
Wellness Force Radio, where we discover the physical and emotional intelligence to live life well.
You can have the same brain states as someone who's done an hour of meditation every day for 40 years.
There's a lot of losses that we go through, so the ability to be able to cope with those losses is very important to build skill in it, because loss will happen.
You have to have spiritual courage to really grow spiritually, because if you really want to take guidance from your soul, you have to be ready to realize that many of the things that you're asking for guidance on, your ego has some kind of an addiction to or an investment in.
Welcome back to the show, everybody. I'm glad you're here. This is Josh Trent, and you're listening to Wellness Force. Today, we're talking with my fellow podcaster, Mr. Chase Chewning, the host of Ever Forward Radio. I've gotten to know Chase over the past couple years. I've seen this guy at conferences, online. He is truly the embodiment of the phrase that his family stands for and his brand stands for, Ever Forward. Now, beyond the self-explanation of living a life with a compass set for true north, always moving on forward to the next moment, this show is really unique. If you're a person who has connections, maybe you work with or interrelate to millennials, specifically men and women in their 20s, teens, or early 30s, this show explores a treasure chest of actionable, insightful advice from Chase and myself to interrelate with millennials and understand what type of language and ways of being will really move the needle for millennials and essentially just all human beings. We're all on this journey together. And Chase has a powerful story. This guy has been through quite a bit in his life, and he's one of the hardest working, most heart-centered men in conscious media in the game, really. It was a true honor to sit with Chase and really understand the deeper aspects of his personality and what drives him. Chase is actually a Virginia native. He's an Army veteran. He's got an MS in health promotion. He's an ACE certified coach, a TRX suspension trainer. But one of the emotional anchors beyond just Chase's academic background that I feel from this man is that at all times, this family creed he has of Ever Forward, it's not only tattooed on his arm, it's what he strives for. It's what kind of emits from his personality at all times. I know you're going to like Chase. I really enjoyed this conversation with Chase and his wisdom as we explore these shifting roles between masculine and feminine, where conscious media is going. How do we stay true to our North Star and create from a place of really being of service to others without getting caught up in the ego, which is so easy to do? Chase has some insight on this. We also explore what it means to be a fully comprehensive and present man now in 2019 and in 2020. We'll talk about Chase's story, what he believes are the core aspects of living a life ever forward, as well as how he became a top health and wellness podcaster following his dream that was partially sparked by Wellness Force, which is a true honor. Deep bow to you, Chase. Also, we have a real dynamic back and forth about our belief systems, how they get imprinted from childhood, and really excited to hear Chase's mindset. He's a few younger years than me, and just seeing the way that he articulates and holds himself in conversations, he really directs from a place of personal power. It was really inspiring to sit with Chase, and I think about if the future of our conscious media is in the hands of men like Chase, we're moving in the right direction. Make sure you listen to his podcast, Ever Forward Radio, as well as check out the show notes today to learn more about Chase at wellnessforce.com/296. And I know a lot of people are listening to this either during their workout or pre-workout or post-workout. Maybe you're going to exercise later on tonight. One of the core aspects of our wellness is how much we move intelligently, and also how we recover. It's so easy to forget that all the health benefits of our workouts and our exercise, they actually occur when we recover, when we rest. And with our demanding schedules, it can be really challenging to get in all the lifestyle factors to get proper rest. This is why, in a busy world, Supplementing with recovery products from trusted sources is so important. This is why Wellness Force partnered with Life Aid Beverage Company, creators of the Fit Aid Zero and the Fit Aid RX. These sugar-free, GMO-free, amazing health beverages are stacked with recovery vitamins and nutrients. Check this out. Each can, super low calorie, refreshing citrus taste, really good. It actually tastes like you're drinking an orange, but like better. Drinking an orange, but better. It's got B complex and glutamine and turmeric and CoQ10 and a host of other super healthy recovery nutrients to give you the upper hand when you're done working out. So if you've been feeling like you've been looking for a better recovery phase of your exercise, go to wellnessforce.com/0. That's ZERO. The company has given you $20 off of 48 cans. This is a huge hookup. Just go to wellnessforce.com/0, ZERO. Get $20 off of 48 cans. Give this a test drive. You can mix and match the cases. Support Life Aid Beverage Company. They're doing amazing work in and out of the CrossFit world and the athletic world. I love what they stand for, the values that they have, and they stand for us. So go to wellnessforce.com/0. Pick up the $20 off on the 48 cans. Get them right to your door for this test drive. wellnessforce.com/0. Now let's drop in live and in person in downtown LA with Chase Chewning on Wellness Force.
Josh, I got to tell you, this is the part of the journey where you're just like, how the hell did we get here?
Yeah.
At least for me, because the very first time I ever reached out to you outside of like listening to your podcast, which yours and a couple others were the ones that were the biggest catalyst for me in my journey the last couple of years where I am now. And then I found out, I went on your website one time and, oh, he does like complimentary calls or like consultation. It was like 15, 20 minutes.
Yeah.
I was like, that's really freaking cool. And so I reached out, and I was in my senior year of my grad school program, health promotion back in DC. I'll never forget this. I got there early because I know we had our call. I was parked on the side street. And I'm just like listening to a podcast. I was like, oh shit, I'm about to talk to Josh Trent, Wellness Force. This would be so cool. And that's when I started getting this idea of maybe doing my own and just figuring out what I wanted to do with this whole wellness thing. And then now here we are 3 years later. You're sitting in my apartment building in LA. We've met multiple times now. It's just amazing to from where I was to where we are now.
So
thank
cool.
you, man.
Oh, dude, that fills my heart up right now. I mean, it's dope to be here with you because I've gotten to know you, and now I understand kind of what you're about, who you are, and honestly why you do it. And I've felt connected to your mission ever since you interviewed me on your show.
By the way, it was in the 30s or 40s.
Yeah, it was early in your game,
like 30s, and now we're like in the 200s.
So it's amazing to me to be in any regard somebody that receives inspiration from or motivation from. I always feel from people that share with me like, hey, I got something from you. I always share with them exactly what I'm about to tell you. And it's like, it's an honor. Like, it is an absolute honor to be able to know that a fraction of what I do or who I am in some way supports the growth or the betterment of someone else. So, and you're great at what you do, man. That's why we're here doing a dual episode, right?
And before I forget, I want to say this. I had this moment earlier. I was like, some things I wanted to bring up, and just to make sure I don't forget this, I think this is such an important point to anyone listening right now or watching that is maybe struggling with, why do I keep doing this? You know, am I really passionate about this? Is this going to turn into anything? Yeah. Does it serve me? Will it serve others? You never know the work that you're doing. It almost doesn't matter as much, I think, of how it serves you. I think it's important, but if you're going for the longer term goal here, the bigger reach, the bigger impact, you have to keep going. Because what if Josh called it quits? I don't know if I ever would have started my show. What if, in a moment of like, fuck it kind of thing, if you would have just, called it quits, and then who knows if I would be here doing what I'm doing. Like,
that's
you
such
never
a
know,
good point.
But you have to keep going for you and for the people before you.
And I'll say this one thing. There have been many nights in my process that I've wanted to quit. I mean, I think the feeling of quit is universal for all of us. Like, who doesn't have moments where they're like, fuck this, I want to quit? That's to be human.
Just today, right?
Yeah.
Like how many times today?
But I will say with you and I both, and with people with our presence or mindset or however you want to define it, there is this unique je ne sais quoi, like a signature spark that I think creators have way deep down in their soul. Yeah. And I think that's the part of you and me and people that choose not to quit, because it's a choice.
Yep.
And there's consequences on both sides. I think there's a unique divine spark that is in some way connected to higher power. And you can call it God, you can call it Allah, you could call it higher intelligence. I don't care what you call it, but I know that in some way you and I are a representation of a higher intelligence that is bringing light to the world. And I truly believe that. And I think that's on the nights where I do want to quit, I tap into that power, and I've had a lot of tools that have expressed for me over the past 3 years to get me closer to God. And I'm not talking about a bearded man in the sky. Okay. I'm talking about the thing
Santa Claus.
Right. I'm talking about the thing that brought us here, the thing that why we do what we do, and I'm curious about you, man. When you first started, you started with a unique mission. Has that changed? Because for me, when I think about you, I'm like, yeah, this is the man that allows himself and others to move life forward, ever forward. Well, did that change from the beginning till now?
The mission, I'll say the purpose and the impact has definitely stayed the same. And I would even more so say it has become more solidified and it's become stronger. But the way in which I go about that is very different. And this could not be more timely. I'm actually, tomorrow and Tuesday, I have my personal business coach coming into town. And after we go through that work and the conversations I've had recently with people in my life that I value, we're completely shifting gears on a lot of things, on how we provide products and services, and how we go about that mission, and how we help others live a life ever forward. Because it's just like I'm making fetch happen, trying so hard, and it's just that's so timely because recently I have really had to kind of come back to square one in terms of, all right, what am I trying to make happen and what is just naturally happening?
Yeah.
Where am I putting all of my energy and efforts in that it maybe is not being reciprocated in terms of that ROI or like the growth and the impact? And where is it just happening? Where am I just showing up and the magic is there, that connection is there? And shifting gears and how that really looks in terms of like the business side of things.
So for your peeps, this is cool. For Wellness Force Radio.
Yeah, this is a combo, by the way. You haven't picked up.
Tell us who you are, man. Who's Chase and what does he do? Why does he do it? Like, what does your heart do to guide you through this ever forward process?
So on paper, my name is Chase Chewning. I have a bachelor's in let me go through the formal. If we got some, corporate world listeners, I went to school, got my bachelor's in exercise science, a master's in health promotion. I've done personal training, group exercise training, online coaching. I'm a certified health coach, all things health wellness. You name the job, name the title, I've pretty much done it. Before that, I was active duty in the Army for about 6 years. And before then, even, I just lived in the most beautiful countryside in Southwest Virginia. I had the best childhood, eating the food that my grandparents ate in our garden, just running all over the mountain.
Sounds like Norman Rockwell.
Oh, it's like, what's that movie? A River Runs Through It, or like Little House on the Prairie. We didn't have wagon wheels, but, we had cars and, phones and things like that. We did have a well. We drank well water, but great quality of life. And really the catalyst for my change really happened when I was going through about halfway through 4 years into my service, became injured. My
service
role,
in the Army. You were in the Army.
Yeah.
Were you a specific type of branch within the Army?
Of military intelligence.
Military intelligence.
Yeah. I could tell you more, but I'd have to kill you, Josh.
Cool. Okay. I like intelligence.
Your security
intelligence is my favorite.
Emotional, even
and physical.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's very funny you say those two words. Not to derail my own story, but that emotional and physical and spiritual actually are three words that have been nonstop in my life, in my head, the universe just screaming at me in terms of trauma. And I am so excited to dive into this conversation with you because who else better to, in my opinion, to kind of talk about this emotional intelligence type of thing and traumas in true wellness terms, to understand things and put it into action for true wellness. These things, part of my story, physical trauma, significantly injured in preparation for a deployment, the loss of my father, my best friend, to a horrific terminal illness, ALS, emotional and spiritual trauma. That really made me question my faith and just for months and months and months cry out, why God me? And then even years after. And then as of late, doing some deep dive work into literally the first formidable memory I have is of emotional trauma. I never really connected the dots up until the last couple of weeks. I think back to right when my parents initially split up. I'm 4, maybe 5 years old. And we're at our grandparents in the countryside, and I come down off the hill, and we have this carport, like this open air garage thing on the side of the house. And my mom, my biological mom, is there on the steps, her back to me. She's facing the backyard, crying, like shaking, just so upset. And my dad is there trying to just console her. And my very first memories around this emotional trauma, seeing my parents scared, my mom very scared, upset, and just flashes these words like, why are we here? What are we doing? We're broke. And so from a very beginning stage, and I only know this now because of the work I've put myself onto over the years, is that I'm constantly questioning, am I good enough? What am I doing? I have a horrible relationship with money. I'm always like, am I overcharging? Am I undercharging? Is this worth it? What's the right investment kind of thing? And it's just been those things, that first memory, my physical trauma, my emotional trauma and spiritual, like these traumas I'm really looking into to just really clean up my wellness, man.
Chase, I'm so extremely impressed and just excited because you are much more millennial than I am. I'm 1980. So like I got
We're not that far off. I'm 85.
Right, but but you got 5 more years of millennial in you. I got 1 foot in millennial and the other foot in the other generation. And what I sense from you is you're this voice of conscious masculine. Like, I don't know if you realize this or not, but I'll just express this to you right now.
Hit me, man.
Right? I'll just describe this for everyone who's listening. We're sitting on this beautiful deck. There's like sunny Los Angeles. We're kind of in a posh neighborhood. Yeah, and here's Chase talking about emotional intelligence and trauma in an area where I don't know if it's like the perfect fit for that. So really what you are, man, and my sense on you is that you're this evolved masculine for the millennial generation. And this is why I was stoked to talk to you and do this show, because there is a part of me that feels like I'm really not scared. Scared's the wrong word, but I'm concerned about what's going on with younger men. Because I'm 39 years old. And we're not too far apart, but I think a lot of your audience, at least what I see on Instagram, is like guys in their mid to late 20s. They're kind of cutting their path. They're finding their way. They want to live their life ever forward. And a lot of them are not aware of the deep wounding and the things inside of them from an emotional vibration perspective that are actually running their lives. And the quote that came up for me when I was hearing you talk, I was like, oh, Chase is going to the subconscious. Chase is actually looking at the subconscious things that rule his life and how he's changing those. And my favorite quote, man, the number one quote about this subconscious is Carl Jung. I don't know if you ever dove into Carl Jung at all.
A little bit. This might sound familiar.
He has the red book. It's like $10,000 or something. Anyways, his quote is, until you make the unconscious conscious, it'll rule your life, but you'll call it fate. And that's really what we're talking about here. It's like you have your journey of the injury to your body and the loss of your father and this trauma. I have my stuff too. And we're all, in my opinion, we're all adult men and women walking around, especially those in power, that are driven by wounded children that haven't healed inside. And a lot of us, when we hear that, I think a part of everyone listening is probably like, that feels pretty true. So
you're making me feel uncomfortable on the treadmill, Josh. Getting in my feels in the car.
But I can relate to you, man, because there was a part of my childhood where my mom was manic bipolar. My dad left really young. I was born less than 5 pounds. I was in an incubator for the first 2 weeks of my life. And so I came into this world with like unique challenges. And I think I chose this life so that I could grow from it in a way and go through these thresholds. And I'll never forget, there was this moment, and I think we talked about it on your show a long time ago, where I was 280 pounds at one point in my life. And I was drinking at a party, and it was like
the red cup moment.
The red cup moment.
Set it down. I'm out.
Yes, and I ran home drunk, and I typed in how to be healthy, and that led me on this journey of fitness. And I think, honestly, most people start in personal development with fitness.
God, this is so timely.
Don't you think so?
I had this conversation yesterday with another guest.
What do you think about that?
That is, call it like a societal norm, or maybe what has been kind of presented to us, and so that's maybe the only obvious answer. But I had this conversation with a guest yesterday for the show, and that's what we talked about, and very much so his story and how he works with clients was, we want to feel better, right? We want our life to be better. We're seeking health and wellness. What do we all start with? All right, got to lose weight. I'm going to start running. I'm going to go to the gym. It all starts with fitness.
Yeah.
Fitness is the gateway drug to wellness. Fitness is the gateway drug to true happiness. Fitness is the gateway drug to everything that we're seeking that we have no idea we're even after. And it is only through those initial steps of I do A, I get B. I do work, I get good results. I feel good, I look good. What else can I do? Where else can I do this work? And then it's like, okay, well, if I do this with my body looks good. What if I do this with my mind? Will my mind also be good?
Yeah. And this is the conversation about intelligence, and it's cool that you've already brought it up, like the word intelligence. I've been getting a brand new download this year specifically about intelligence. You know what, man? I used to think intelligence was how smart somebody was.
Oh, yeah.
And then I realized being smart has almost nothing to do with intelligence. And I just have a really strong feeling about this because I used to be the person that when I was a trainer, I would have like all the certifications and I'd go to the FMS and I'd get the NASM and I'd get the ISSA.
Whole alphabet after your name.
Yeah, I'd have like 5.
He's an accredited dude, my friend.
Letters, right? And so then I got to this point where I was like, oh, I'm actually doing that because I don't feel like I'm enough. I feel like I have to have all these pieces of paper on the wall when really the solution to everything is Ralph Waldo Emerson's quote, which is like, it hits me in the throat when I say it. Do the thing and you'll have the power. We don't get the power by gathering, because I feel like intelligence, especially in this modern digital world, has three big phases, man. It's people go through the gathering, they gather information, they get the certs, they read the books, they listen to podcasts. And like, hell yeah, we're all here on our mutual shows because we're gathering together. So it's beautiful.
Fellowship, absolutely.
Fellowship, but people get stuck in the gathering phase for intelligence. And it's easy to gather because when you gather, you don't have to apply.
Well, what's the quote in the beginning of your show, which I use all the time, by the way, from a former guest of yours? I forget his name. But in the intro to your show, knowing without doing is simply the same thing as not knowing.
He is the man. And I got that from Dan because he lost his father, actually. And when he lost his father, he realized that you can have all the information. You can gather as much information, the first phase of intelligence, as possible. But if you don't have the courage to apply and then lastly to embody, nothing's going to change. You can't live your life ever forward if you're stuck in the gathering phase.
And this is what we're doing. We're downloading, seeking, right? Going to fitness, personal development, learning, like I'm on this path to self-improvement or whatever I think that is, I being the person here. And we're downloading all of these files in all of these various formats. I'm trying to make some kind of millennial analogy here, like a digital reference. Yeah. We're downloading PNGs and JPEGs and AVIs and all of these various formats, just assuming, maybe hoping that we have that software, we have that program that's going to be able to open them.
And from a millennial perspective, we're already lit, y'all. All right?
Get lit, stay lit, right?
Wait, I got that one foot in 1980. But I feel you. I understand what you're saying because there's a huge part of this gathering phase that's so alluring. Our whole society is built on what do you do, what kind of car do you drive, what's your status, what's your title, how much money in the bank. That's all gathering shit. Yeah. That's all just like, who am I from like a pulling in the chips at Vegas standpoint. But the second phase of intelligence, man, to go back to this is the application phase. So for anybody that feels like they're not getting progress or they're not moving forward, it's most likely because you're stuck in the gathering and you haven't been applying. So applying is when you try on the sweater, you see if it itches, you go to the new workout, you go to the new coach, you invest in yourself, right? Like you
commit.
You have your coaching program with
Everforward Coach,
your coaches and all the people that work with you. That takes courage. That takes a heart of a warrior to do something new, to get out of the gathering phase and to ask for help and be like, hey, I can't do this on my own. I get to have help right now. And I think what we're all working towards, though, Chase, is that last phase. Everybody I know, you included, is working towards the embodiment phase. Yeah. And in the embodiment phase, this is where we take what we've gathered, what we've applied and tested, and it's actually part of our being. We have literally downloaded and crystallized it and embodied it in our nervous system so that when I meet somebody like a Paul Chek or a Ben Pakulski or a Chase Chewning, I'm like, oh, this person is a walking embodiment. They've embodied what they've gathered, what they've applied. And I think that can't be faked. One of our mutual friends, Jay Tito, who I'm staying here in LA, he says something amazing. He's like, it's not about faking it till you make it. He's like, that's actually not true. That's disingenuous. It's about being it until you see it. So if somebody's listening and they're like, I want to start a podcast, I want to start a blog, I want to do it, like, great, that spark is inside of you. So be it until you see it. Don't fake it till you make it. I love that.
What you're talking about, if I'm interpreting correctly, is the necessity of a belief system. Because you can't fake it till you make it. You have to believe it, right? You have to really embody, like Josh is saying. You have to embody this vision. And that takes work. It's much easier said than done, but it is 100% possible.
And patience.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. But in order to embody that, well, I believe what the work that I've gone through and what I try to do with people that work with us is it's not fitness. It's not the thing you think it is that's going to get you to that end result, but those are necessary steps. And in order to accurately and effectively build your belief system, because odds are the one you have isn't true. It's an assimilation of your upbringing, all these traumas, like I was saying. It's all of these outside things kind of coming together, and that's what you think is true. And this is where I give credit to people like you and JT and so many other people in this space, and definitely the person who was this catalyst for me. When I decided to step out on my own, when I was like, I love what I do, but I want to do it for myself, right? I want to be the entrepreneur. I just want to do my own thing where I know I will value myself. The mentor and coach that I had in my life for a long time, and I officially hired, I was like, her name's Yetta. She's been on the show before. I was like, Yetta, like, I'm ready. Teach me your ways. Because basically back home in Richmond, Virginia at the time, fitness, wellness entrepreneur, she had done everything. I was like, okay, cool. I'll hire her. She'll teach me all the business secrets, right? Like how to start, how to scale. Josh, the first work we did didn't have anything to do with my business model. It had nothing to do with like how to charge. It was, all right, Chase. She's like, who the fuck are you? What do you believe? I was like, what? Like, wasn't expecting that, you know? But, you know, that was the necessary work. I had to almost abandon my belief system, or at least just be willing to accept the fact that maybe this isn't 100% true. Maybe it does need work. Maybe I need to add things. Maybe I need to remove things. And that was the work necessary to get, you know, backtrack, you know, hey, Chase, what did you do to get to where you are? Hey, Josh, what did you do to get to where you are? I decided, or I had the people in my life help me decide that my beliefs need to change.
Oh, I just got to chill because you made me, by sharing your story, remember my story that I'll share. And by the way, my story is like a fractal of everyone out there in the world. We all go through the hero's journey.
A lot of Josh's backstory, by the way, I'll definitely link your first episode in my show notes here.
Yes.
Go back and check it out.
We did a lot.
Heavy backstory.
Yeah, and that was cool because that was maybe a year and a half, 2 years ago or something.
Almost 2 years, yeah.
2 years ago. So there's this part of what I'm going to say, which is totally aligned with yours. And I, at the 2-year mark of podcasting, had a massive just come to Jesus moment with my soul around identity and branding and who the hell I was. And what happened is that when I started Wellness Force came from this fire from me being in fitness and seeing the power of technology. And I still have a big understanding that technology can help people. Technology is a double-edged sword. And I know that you use it with your platform, with Nudge, and with your coaching people.
We're using it right now.
So we're using technology right now. But I will tell you this. When I did 2 years of speaking at Consumer Electronics, and I moderated panels with like a room of 1,000 people, and there was like people that were making the leading wearables in the world, when I would have conversations with them backstage, I could tell, because I'm intuitive, I could tell that they were doing it kind of because they wanted to help people, but more because they saw the capitalistic wave of IoT and of connected devices scaling massively.
I believe it.
And it made me feel very uncomfortable because I thought, the things that I want to do with wellness technology are not aligned with what I see in the industry. And it really bothered me. And so I had to come to Jesus moment where I'm like, damn, I can't. My old tagline used to be Wellness Force, empowering wellness through technology.
Yeah. Oh, wow. I forgot about that.
This is the old school Wellness Force, which, you know, if you look back and you haven't changed massively in a couple of years, you got to change something. That's for all of us.
Very true. Shout out. We were just talking about this recently. I was like, who's your first guest? Your first guest. Fabio Camana, like the pioneer of fitness and wellness technology. Yes. I've gone to like 2 of his seminars.
Episode number 1 on Wellness Force, dude.
Like case in point, technology and wellness. There you go.
And you know what? I think the title was something like The New Era of Wellness or something like that, which was beautiful. It's so cool. So anyways, I go to Vegas. I'm depressed. I'm stressed out. I'm white knuckling. I'm in this kind of 2nd and a half, 3rd year of entrepreneurship where, God, I was just really unhealthy, like 10 hours a day at the computer, not enough movement breaks, like just really stressed out. And I was feeling this change coming. And I know we all can relate to this. Have you ever felt like what you're doing is you love it, but you know there's something you get to tweak, yet you don't know what it is you're supposed to change? Like that's universal for all of us, right? So I go to Vegas. It was a guy named Rocco, actually, really like behind the scenes, guy behind the guy business coach.
Oh,
and I spent a weekend in Vegas with him. And I'll never forget this. I was eating like eggs at his counter, and he's like, all right, we're going to do your first exercise. Write down 15 qualities and aspects that you'd want to see in a intimate relationship. And I was like, isn't this a business weekend? Isn't this a business weekend?
Is this going to make me money? Like, what is that?
And he said, just trust me, just do it. Wow. And he's like, be specific. Yeah. So 2 hours, I wrote down 15 things I wanted in an intimate partner. And he's like, great. Do those feel true? We went through each one of them, and he said, now cross off the ones that deal with intimacy and leave all the rest, and that's exactly what you want for a business and in a business partnership. And I was like, oh my God, this is so true. Because the same way... I
got to take notes here. That's
a good thing we're recording. So the same way that we run our intimate lives and our relationships, minus the physical and the intimacy, it's the same characteristics and qualities that we desire in business relationships and with our business in itself. And so I realized I had fallen out of love with Wellness Force. I had fallen out of love with wellness technology. I had fallen out of love with it, and I was feeling a void.
Wow.
And he said, "This is the one question that I'll never forget." He said, "What are you most afraid of sharing?" And I said, I'm most afraid of sharing that I don't have it all figured out, and then I'm just kind of like discovering it all. And he's like, great, what are you discovering? And I said, well, how do I live my life well? You know, how do I eat and move and sleep? And what do my thoughts, feelings, and actions do for my body and for people around me? And he's like, oh, you're discovering intelligence. He's like, you're discovering physical and emotional intelligence.
There's that I word
When
again.
he said that, I mean, we just had a huge car like light us up right now. When he said that, I felt a lightning bolt go through my body. We've all had these moments where someone says something and it is so visceral and your nervous system lights up like a Christmas tree. And I knew from that moment, Chase, like literally, boom, in this guy's kitchen, that not only was what he just said worth the entire cost of the weekend, but it would be the path that I would follow for the rest of my life, without any doubt, because I realized that, I had thought I had to be a guru. I thought I had to have it all figured out. I thought I had to be the expert. And really what resonates with people is the truth of where someone actually is. Like Gary Vaynerchuk talks about it. He just does it in a different way, document instead of create.
Document first, then create. There you go.
So what I'm doing with Wellness Force is I'm sharing authentically, even if it's uncomfortable. Sometimes it's uncomfortable as fuck.
Good.
My physical and emotional intelligence, the discovering process of the physical and the emotional intelligence. Yeah. So to me now, I feel like I'm in integrity. And I think the sickness that so many of us deal with is we have a dream, we have a mission, we have a purpose, yet the fuel source is not at integrity with our soul. And it takes time for that fuel source to align. It takes time, man. And this is when people quit, right?
Yeah.
When they're not aligned. So thank you for allowing me to remember that. This is the beauty of podcasting.
This is one of the things I love doing this now, especially doing pretty much all of these in-person interviews, is just seeing people light up, just exactly like we're talking about, man. Like when you go back to that moment, I mean, we were talking earlier about, like remembering these traumas and working through them, like how that kind of aligns the mind and the body. So does this, but in an electric way. Is amazing, man. Just seeing you, like your body language, your face, like everything. You didn't stop smiling the whole time. So like that is, I mean, obviously this is your path.
Well, and I feel very strongly your path too. And with respect, I want to ask you. There was a moment that when I first met you, and I think we had a first, second, or third conversation. Actually, you brought up the loss of your dad, and I think I wanted to ask you right away. I was like, how did you deal with that, and what does that mean to you now? Because I don't know, Chase, like many people listening have dealt with the loss of someone. I've never dealt with the loss of a parent. The closest loss I've had is my grandfather, who I'm actually wearing his necklace from World War II.
And I know you're close, which is amazing. Yeah.
So that's my only loss. But, for people that don't know how that's shaped you, how has that shaped you? Like what kind of love do you pull from that relationship, that vacuum? And how does that fuel you now?
Yeah, I think we were at was Expo, Food Expo West.
Yeah,
when, we were Reconnect talking about that.
Yep.
And I'll give a little bit of backstory for you and the person listening. And a lot of people in my audience might know this already, but again, going back to the whole like belief system, why you do what you do, why you believe what you believe. I felt a great one growing up, and a big part of that, the leader really, was my dad and my grandmother and my stepmother, like three core people in my belief system, my upbringing. But my dad specifically, he was my best friend. He was my mentor. I was equally as terrified of him as I did respect him. But just because it was out of this like fear of, I never want to let him down. I never want to let them down. It was no like fear of like actual like physical trauma, anything like that. But he served, and basically every male in my family served. And so I want to honor his legacy. I want to serve as well. So I enlisted in the military. I was fulfilling out what I thought he wanted with my life. And he was very proud of me, of course. So when I lost him, and to answer your question directly, is how did I deal with it? I did not.
How did he die?
I did not. Lou Gehrig's disease, ALS. I found out about halfway through boot camp. His letters became less and less. It became more my stepmom, or it kind of just some vague concerns around some, health issues and doctor's appointment. And I found out right after I got out of boot camp that he was terminal. We all did. And from July 2003, 18 months diagnosis, one of the most escalated cases the doctors had seen, I've ever seen. I literally became a prisoner in his own body. And with that disease, your body just eats itself away. And when I deviated, when I thought I was dealing with it and I deviated from my path, I wanted to go home. I tried to quit the military, and they were going to let me out based upon this family hardship. My dad was like, fuck no. With his literal last abilities to step, to walk, to talk, he flew from Virginia to where I was in Northern California. I was stationed up in Monterey. And he spent 4 days convincing me that you didn't do this because of me. You did this because this is your path. And do not let the end of mine prevent you from yours ever starting. And that he spent 4 days teaching me what it meant to live a life ever forward. This phrase, these two words that I had heard my entire life, because he said it as kids, he picked it up from his time in the military. It was detrimental. And so I didn't. And so then I stuffed it all down. And a lot of the work that I'm working through now and studies, will show, well, no wonder, Chase, you blew out your hips and your back and tore your hamstring. That's the root chakra. This deep-rooted emotional trauma eventually led to this physical trauma.
Yep.
And then after that, I spent about 10 years stuffing it down, festering and wounding myself and so many other relationships and just people around me. And then thankfully, the right person came into my life, my wife now. And Josh, I was suffering PTSD. I would have panic attacks, anxiety attacks. I would become unsafe behind the wheel of a car, and I would hear a song that reminded me of him. We'd be out in a movie theater, someone would die. I would have a breakdown. And she was like, no, you can't live like this. She called me out. It's like, Chase, you're going through all this personal development work, right? You're in the gym, you're becoming a better person, but you are completely denying, you are suppressing this other area of your wellness. And so, thankfully, she was in my life and she helped me work through that. And then I began to realize, like we were talking about earlier, that I can physically get better through physical work, but I need to emotionally get better through emotional work. And it took me 10, 11 years to honestly recognize that I did not deal with it and to allow myself to just ask for help, mental health, opening up to my family.
Yeah. The
very first episode of the podcast, a little intro, I really opened up for the first time and talked about the whole reason. I launched Ever Forward Radio January 22nd, 2017, his memorial, the anniversary of him passing.
What an honoring, man. I was just getting chills the whole time you were sharing there, because why else are we doing anything that we do if it isn't to connect and serve the people that we care about?
Absolutely, man. Amen.
And that's everything to me, because it's one thing to make money and to be rich and have wealth, but why the hell are we even doing any of this? Why are we even here on the planet in the first place if we're not doing it to connect and serve with people that we care about? And when I hear a story like yours, I'm like, man, what a power vacuum that was created. And so it's a deep honoring to your father. It's a deep honoring to your father to be like, wow, if and how he sees you now, if you believe that people can see us and that spirits are around us, and if you believe in the 3 and 4 and 5 Ds, I have a sense that your dad is watching you and he's so, so proud.
Thank you, man. I appreciate that. I believe it. Yeah.
He really is proud. And I feel that, man. I really, I feel that. And I think that people can make choices. You could, because you and I have both interviewed a lot of people on our podcast about people that have loss. And I always ask the guest, I'm like, okay, well, what was the little thing inside of you that made you choose to go forward, or to choose that something happened to you that you would use as anger and bitterness and resentment to actually stop serving the people that you care about? So there's got to be some secret sauce inside of you that made you choose to go forward. Was it the way that he spent 4 days with you? Was that the recipe of how you chose to serve and move forward, or was it something else?
Yeah, it's a really good question. That definitely was a part of it, but also, this may still be an excuse, but this is just another part of my story, the puzzle there. I felt so torn about not being able to be there for him and my family. And they all assured me, no, Chase, it's okay, we're good, we have help, the family was coming together. But I was literally on the other side of the country, sometimes on the other side of the world.
Yeah.
And I was just, I need to be there, I want to be there. But every time I would go back and I would see him, and he was worse and worse and worse. So it was this dichotomy of how bad I wanted to be there with him and my family. But every time I did, and this is where the PTSD set in from military him, was he was becoming this unrecognizable human being. And it my hero was just being torn away from me. And so a big part of that was when I got out, that's why I immediately went back home to Virginia. I was like, I'm doing nothing but being around my family. In some ways that was great, but other ways now I'm looking back, it's that was me interjecting my agenda and what I thought was the overall good for my family on them. In a lot of ways, it's just what I wanted, because I thought that's what I needed to feel better. They didn't necessarily need me. I'm sure it was great to have me around again, but I'm the oldest of 3. I'm the big brother. I was a leader in the military. My driving need to kind of serve and just be present was also a big contributing factor to that.
Yeah, this leadership quality, man. And I'm the youngest. So my brother I love and respect. And do you have a brother and sister, or what's your family?
I'm the oldest of 3. My sister's in the middle, and my younger brother.
Did anyone else serve in the military?
No, we have a cousin and other family members, but just in my generation, just me.
Yeah, so I'm from this Italian culture where I'm half Sicilian, half English, and it's interesting the culture of family and how that directs relationships, intimate relationships we have. And I know you actually did one recently with your wife. You talked about relationship dynamics and how she's in the Persian culture, and the trials, the struggles, and the successes of that. and I'll just share for me, like I'm in a brand new relationship now, and she is so my queen. It feels so amazing, man.
Congratulations, man.
It took me 3.5 years of doing deep work. And I'd love to riff with you back and forth on this. There's a path that we all choose, and relationships, the whole conduit of a relationship is to move forward, to move ever forward. So I think when I understand like what it means to be in relationship, it really starts with the relationship with Josh Trent. It really starts with the relationship of who Chase Chewning is. Like if I don't have a quality, loving, self-worth, self-love based directive and narrative, nothing else is going to flourish from that. And so it seems to me like you had 10 plus years of like learning what it was to get rid of trauma and replace that with self-love, self-worth. And I don't care who we are, all roads, especially in intimate relationships, all roads lead to self-love and self-care. Yeah. That's basically it. Yeah. What have you done in your life to really cultivate self-love? And this is like a kind of woo-woo for some people, especially people in the service, like, what do you mean self-love, pussy? Right?
What do you mean feelings? Yeah, I can't shoot a feeling. Like what?
Right. It's hard to talk about things sometimes to quantify it, but you and I, we don't have to go esoteric. We can just have a real conversation about it. So what are the qualities and what are the things that you cultivate on the daily or the weekly that are really aligned with self-love?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, for me, I think this answers your question. It is proper attention and align with my community. And yes, I had 10, 12 years of, I will say, what I thought was me working through things. I was physically healing from my traumas and my injuries, and I then began to find value and worth in that. And then it put me on the path for kind of this emotional healing, spiritual healing. But along that way, the biggest contributing factor for me was being able to align myself with the right community that was going to not allow me anymore to just make up this wonderful world. Like, oh yes, good job, Chase. Like you went to the gym or you saw a therapist or like you did a thing. Yeah. But no, you need to keep doing the things. And I didn't have those people in my life. And part of it was probably me, me aligning the people or choosing to keep them around. But it wasn't until, really when, 10, 12 years later, and I met May. And in her nature, in her culture, definitely the Persian culture, they'll call you out on shit. But she was just like, no, like, open up. Like, you're only telling me the things that you think I want to hear. You're only telling yourself the things that you think you need to hear. But that's not truth. That's not your truth. And this was flat out like week 2 or 3 of us dating. She got real fast.
You got to the truth early. This is exactly what happened with me and Carrie Michelle. You get to the truth real early in the start of a relationship, and that's the bedrock for success.
I think when you know it's real, like I think you can tell right away. Like, wow, she and I both are that way. We're like, yes, this is it. Like, like day 1, day 0, we joke, we started dating. We met, we've been inseparable ever since. And she called me out on this like week 2 or 3, and I was so grateful for it. I am now, but then, and that was the catalyst. So where like, oh wow, like okay, maybe some of these people in my life aren't contributing to my growth. Maybe I'm not contributing to their growth, and that was really the catalyst I needed to open up and improve my community so that I could ultimately open up and improve myself.
You know what's sometimes the hardest medicine to swallow for all of us is that the people that we love the most may unconsciously or consciously be sabotaging us. And we all kind of wince and flinch on that one because, God, it's so interesting in my friend dynamics. And tell me what you think about this. Sometimes I have a sense that people don't even know they don't know. It's like Landmark. Have you done Landmark or have you heard of Landmark? No. So in Landmark, they have this term. It's called a blind spot. It's emotional intelligence training. And in the blind spot, someone doesn't know that they don't even know. So even if they wanted to not know, they wouldn't even know that they didn't know, right? So it's totally in their blind spot.
Someone might need to hit the 30 seconds back real quick and repeat that.
Repeat that. Basically, you can't see it even if you wanted to because of a program. They call it a racket that runs. Yeah. And a racket, an emotional racket, is when someone has a way of being that hides the hurt that they have. So a racket for someone in an A-type dynamic of power might be they're always the one that buys all the groceries, does all the things, is the first responder. Like they're always on scene and they're always taking care of everyone else because there's a part of them in the dark, in their blind spot, that they don't think they're worthy or that there's some kind of self-love piece that's missing. Yes. And so by shining light on other people all the time and by being the person in control that's seen and valued by the public eye as worthy, it kind of puts a temporary salve on the blind spot. And I've felt that for a long time in training. I mean, 10 years I was a personal trainer, 10,000 sessions plus. There was not a day that went by where I didn't wake up or go to bed with some kind of an empty hunger in my stomach.
Yes.
And I think if I'm being really honest, it's because the majority of us that get into fitness or service or practicing or whatever it is, it's because we're lacking that relationship with ourselves. You know, whether it's Gretchen Rubin or Tom BILYEU or anybody talking about it, the first step of intelligence for our emotions, the very first thing is awareness.
Yes, sir.
Like
Yes, sir.
if we're aware of who we are, if we're aware of how we feel, that's where it all begins. But we live in a culture that's like caffeine, drugs, porn, sex, shopping, overworking. It's all these tools and weapons of mass distraction that just compress our awareness. And they shrink our bandwidth of awareness. So we never have a deep dive, a true understanding of our awareness. But then, here's what happens. A man or a woman, you know, for you, it was your lovely wife. For me, it's this wonderful woman from the desert coming in. They come into our lives and they crack us open. And they're like, oh,
so true.
You think you know what's going on?
Yeah.
You think you know, and it works for men and women both.
Yeah.
You think you know what's going on? Let me show you your blind spots by me just being me. And together we grow. That's the real essence of a relationship. And so I know Aubrey Marcus and Kyle and all these people have open relationships. That's fine because maybe that's their path. I think the greatest conduit for personal growth in anyone's lifetime ever is a conscious coupling, is an intimate relationship. You will bring up more triggers, more bullshit, more back and forth, more growth in general. It is an accelerated growth curve towards love and potential, being in a conscious relationship.
Let's go deeper there, man. So it sounds like again seeing the same like fire and energy run through you as the other conversation we were having before. Someone listening who is maybe in a new relationship, or maybe they've had this conversation where their new significant other kind of called them out or just said something, not in like an aggressive way, but just said something that stirred up something in you, made you feel a little uncomfortable. And if it makes you feel uncomfortable, odds are they're kind of probing for some truth. So how do we go through that? How are you going through that? How can we kind of be aware of this emotional intelligence stirring up in this new relationship?
I think our triggers are our biggest teachers. So if I have a trigger, it's either teaching me that I have contrast of something I don't want, or it's teaching me of something that is good for me and I just haven't processed it yet. So on one side we have of the trigger. Think of a light switch, right? When you go to a room and you flick a light switch up, the light turns on.
Yeah.
Well, the whole time we didn't know that our trigger was down because nobody had ever flicked it before. So when these women and men come in our lives, they flick our light switch, they flick our trigger, and all of a sudden, bam, we're illuminated in a room with brand new things that we'd have never seen before.
And like the light switch, they didn't create that energy. That energy was always flowing to that same switch.
Exactly.
It's always been there.
Exactly.
We just needed the right person to flick it on.
This is why I love podcasting with a podcaster, because we can communicate in metaphor like LL Cool J. Like we can just talk without actually saying anything.
Hey, my first name is James. Ladies love Cool James too.
So what's really cool about this is that, you know, as uncomfortable as the light turning on in the room is, it was there in the dark anyways. It was already there. So if I have things that are, here's a good example. Here's a reference. Expectation. So one of the dynamics in a relationship, in a conscious coupling, is around expectation. If I have a way of being that is derived on what I will receive in return, so in other words, my only way of being is that I do and I act from a space where I'll know I'll get something back, and it's a hard expectation that I have, that is a human behavior that is ripe for decay. It is ripe for transformation. It is ripe for trigger. So if I, for example, am in a relationship and I only buy things for her because I know that she'll give me like love and a hug back, and I love you, baby. Thank you so much.
Wait, are you talking about Persian women?
No, maybe I'd love to learn about Persian dynamics.
But we've gone through 5 love languages.
Have you?
Hers is gifts, and there's nothing wrong with that.
Mine is physical touch, and thankfully so
Yeah.
so is my ladies. So, anyways, the reason the metaphor is like, okay, we all have the light switch on the wall. The man or the woman comes into our life, they flick the light switch up because they're just being them and you're just being you. All of a sudden, the room is illuminated with all the things that were in there in the dark, and now we get to talk about it. And what's most comfortable is keeping it in the dark, just like being in service jobs and shining light on other people. Then you don't have to deal with the parts of yourself that are dark. But in a relationship, there ain't nowhere to hide, my friends. There's nowhere to hide.
The lights are on. The spotlights are on.
The lights are on. You can
Yeah.
see the dirt under the bed. The spot on the wall, all the stuff that's been mashed down by caffeine porn and everything else in the world, the weapons of mass distraction. So when we go to this one aspect of human behavior where I'm only choosing to be or do or give in a certain way because my subconscious knows that I'll receive in return,
Yes,
that is the most detrimental, fastest way to end a relationship, to have the coupling be starting in a place of disingenuousness. Because if I'm only doing something for somebody else because I secretly know I'll get something in return, well, then that is the energy that I bring to the relationship. Then the whole relationship is built on me always getting something in return. Now, I know what people are thinking. Wait a minute. Isn't my girlfriend or my boyfriend or whoever I'm with, aren't they supposed to give me love when I give them something? I mean, it's nice. It's a preference. But if that's our motivation to give or to love or to even just be in the relationship, then it's starting off with the wrong energy. And there's a coach that I don't know if you've heard of him. He's in Austin, Texas. His name is Brandon Hawk.
No,
and he's really powerful coach, and he does a lot of deep intelligence work. And I love this. He says, the energy of how something is started will be the energy of how it is sustained. And so feel into that for a moment. If I'm starting a relationship and I'm starting with expectation, I'm starting with it should be this way or it has to be this way. Yeah. Instead of just taking a deep breath and just letting it unfold organically, then I'm starting with the kind of energy that I'm going to need to white knuckle for it to be sustained.
That's so true, man.
Yeah.
So
that's one aspect of the light switch being flipped
think
up.
about that. The energy has always been there. I mean, when you go to turn on that switch, I mean, unless the power's out. I mean, I don't know. The analogy can be debunked.
Unless the transformer is blown.
The energy is always there. It's always been in there in us. And either we knew it was there, we knew the switch was there or not, but once it's flipped up, like you can't go back. The Pandora's box has been opened. Yep. I love where this is going. And actually this brings up something in me that going back to like the whole millennial aspect.
Yeah.
I feel, and I've been out of kind of like the dating game for a while, but I really feel like people this day and age, and I'll say millennials or just dating now in general, all these weapons of mass distraction, definitely like we're talking about, it allows us this false inability. We think it's an ability, but it's a false inability to create our own world because we can live in our phones, we can live in our cameras, we can do whatever we want, whenever we want, we can get it yesterday. We can Amazon Prime now our life in every way possible.
Everything.
So honestly, is it our fault or is it society's fault? Is it just our conditioning? Well, if I can do all of these things in my life with extreme pace and get an extreme result, why can't I get that in my relationship? You know? And how do we solve that, though?
I think to be in relationship is to let go of having the instant gratification model ever be a thing. I don't know any relationship that I've ever seen that's successful where we treat it like an Amazon Prime. But what's fascinating is in unhealthy dynamics. And if you look at attachment styles, a really good one is Andrew De Gregorio, who'd be a fascinating guest for your show. He came on Wellness Force twice. He talks about the attachment styles. Are you avoidant? Are you the kind of person that is codependent? Are you a dependent or are you an independent? There's all these different attachment styles. And those attachment styles come from 0 to 7, Chase. And you know this because you're doing work on it and you have been doing work on it for a while now. Everything that happens from 0 to 7, science proves this. Yeah. The hemispheres of the brain are still connected 0 through 7. As we go from 7 and onwards, the hemisphere starts to separate. That's why we have right brain people dominant and left brain people dominant. But when we're children, we're basically on drugs.
Oh my gosh.
We're in theta state. We're in theta brainwave for 7 years. So we're literally, the analogy I could make, we're like a bed of roses. Roses are beautiful and they smell amazing, but they can be trampled very easily. So it's really important the first 7 years of life that those roses are cultivated with water and sunshine and love and the right kind of dirt and everything else, and that they're not trampled. But what happens is we have parents that have been trampled themselves.
Oh my gosh.
And then they unknowingly, they're not doing it because they want to. They're trampling their children's roses because it's the only model they know.
Yeah.
And so really waking up or consciousness, elevating consciousness comes from a conversation like this where we're just talking about the truth. We're just pulling back the curtain a little bit and saying, hold on.
Decades and decades later, mind you.
Decades later, but,
Yeah.
but this is the process of waking up. I mean, it takes us, 8 to 9 hours to sleep, and then we wake up after 8 to 9 hours. Extrapolate that on a human behavior standpoint. It sometimes can take a decade or two before people begin to wake up, if ever.
Mm-hmm.
And what scares people the most is the thought of waking up because of all the roses that have been trampled they might have to look at.
I would even dare say I was asleep for the first 29 years of my life. From like 27 to 29, that's when all these things that we've been talking about, I began to fully acknowledge and willingly work through. And it's not that I completed that work in 2 years. It's just, it took that amount of time for me to become aware of my own shit, my own ego, my own self, the ego and shit and self of so many other people, and to go through, like I was saying earlier, the filtration of the community, to really, to understand what it means to be able and to allow myself to love myself. And I couldn't have done that any sooner because I didn't know who I was. And I've said this before, like, how can you fully love someone if you don't know who the hell they are? You love your significant other, you love your parents, you love your dog. Why? Because we know who they are. We know what they do for us. We know who they are in the world. So I think people listening, like, do you love yourself? And if not, do you know yourself? Start there. And that was the most important work that I needed to do. I had achieved fitness. Mm-hmm. I was rehabbed to a significant state. All of these parts of my puzzle were coming together. But it's like all the pieces were there, but they just kept kind of like loosely coming apart again because the glue that needed to hold it all together was this emotional intelligence work and this loving of myself.
Another fantastic metaphor. I mean, no, and this is
a drinking game. How many analogies can two podcasters make in an episode?
Legitimate, though. This is the true lens of intelligence is communicating by metaphor. And if you look at how the ancient cultures did it, Native Americans, even if you look at how Paul Chek communicates, or just anybody that's been around for multiple decades in our industry, they communicate powerfully through metaphor. And so, this is a cool jam.
Storytelling.
Mm-hmm. This is a cool jam with you because all of these metaphors have deep roots in the truth. It's not like we're trying to be metaphoric. It's just how we're communicating.
I'm not a writer. I'm not a philosopher.
because words and esoteric speak and kind of like getting into the weeds with linguistics, it can turn people off. But you can be 6, you can be 90, you can be 45, you can be from California or Alabama. And everybody understands the language of metaphor, the language of story. And I think right now why podcasting is just having a resurgence is because on a podcast that's rich like this one, there's nowhere to hide, right? you can tell in someone's voice if they're being canned. Mm-hmm. You can feel it in the tone of their box, their voice box, if they're not being themselves. And when I look at my first 50 episodes, I was doing the best I could. I was being the self that I wanted to be, but that self wasn't really connected to the aspects you and I are talking about.
I'm raising my hand right there with you, man.
That
Absolutely,
self wasn't like, I didn't really love Josh Trent in 2015. Mm-hmm. I like kind of did, and I had read books on self-love. I had read lots of books on self-love, but I was that stuck in the gathering phase.
Yeah.
And what's made the difference, man, has been going and this ever forward path that you talk about, like going through the shit is actually the only way. Whether you believe in Ryan Holiday, like the obstacle is the way. Everybody's got different ways of describing.
I read him every day.
Do you?
The Daily Stoic, the first thing I read every morning for 3 years now, the first post on all my social media is that day's Daily Stoic. I've got all of his books on my bookshelf. I just gave one to my videographer yesterday. Unreal. Timeless.
How do you blend stoicism and expression in your life?
It's like what I think you were just saying is this necessity of analogy and storytelling, because let's face it, these things that I'm reading, we're talking about, Ryan Holiday has worked in Stoicism. thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of years ago, like BC, Marcus Aurelius, Seneca, Epictetus, all of these philosophers saying things, writing things in their like personal journals and speeches. They didn't even know if there was going to be civilization tomorrow.
Yeah.
But they have stood the test of time because they are speaking universal human truths through the art and the lens of storytelling. And if you can do that, it doesn't matter what you're saying, because how you're saying it is always going to be understood. And this is why I was getting so excited when we were talking about the podcast platform. Of course, we're a little biased because, you know, we're both podcasters.
Yeah.
But this has been not only a great area for how I have gone through my own kind of realization of some things lately, beginning to better fully understand my story, but actually I did a public speaking event last weekend about this, how to get better at telling your story. And you can do that by learning how to understand and read your own story first. And that's what I love about podcasts. It is this art. And I would agree, after like the first 50, hell, even like 100 episodes, I was just doing kind of what I thought I needed to do to be a good podcaster. But no, once I really recognized, and again, continued to go through my personal work, was that it's storytelling. And I don't need to get the most, you don't need to get the most PhD letters after their name, you know, scientists who can just say all of this garble. No, people are going to respond. People are going to understand and comprehend. More importantly, people are going to apply stories that they can understand and relate to.
Yep.
Josh, how do we understand our story?
That's the most loaded question I've heard in 2019.
How do we put ourselves in the position to like understand that we, first of all, everyone has a story, right? You know, you've lived. Yep. So then how do you understand? How do you read it?
All right. So using the model of all these great philosophers' teachings and the same model that's been repeated by the RUBINs, the BILYEUs, and everyone else, let's start with the awareness first. And a lot of people use morning pages as a way to download. Some people use Scrivener to write a book. Other people do blogs every day. You know what it really begins with, man? And this is going to sound so simple, but I want this to land for everyone. Start with where you are. Do what you can with what you have. I don't know who said it. It resonates the truth for me. Just start. Just start. I mean, Sword in the Stone, Archimedes.
Oh my gosh,
right?
yes.
This is one of my favorite mentors when I was a child. This is why I love certain movies, because they have such radical lessons. And he talked about like just starting. I mean, that's it. These little kids are receiving this message from a Disney movie, like literally start where you are, because the kid didn't pull out the sword in the stone unless he tried. Right.
Yeah.
And we're all working on our own story. We're all working on our own separation, initiation, and return to be our own sword in the stone sword puller. We're all working on that. So start with where you are. What does it look like tactfully, though? So nuts and bolts. What I did is that I started looking at how other storytellers were telling their stories. So when I started, I would look at like John Lee Dumas, or I would look at like a Jade Teta, or I would look at my friends in the space, and I would study them. I would very conscientiously study how masterful storytellers were telling their story. And then I would go home and I would write like a press page, or I would write like a media kit, or I would just practice it all. And I can't tell you how many times I've updated that story. And now I can tell the story with no notes from my heart because I've practiced it so many times. And I don't need to have notes to tell who I am, because I just know who I am because I've practiced explaining it and articulating it. And I think from a tactical perspective, first, have the self-awareness to just start where you are and just write down what you think your story is, and don't judge it. That's a big piece. Start with where you are with what you have, and don't judge yourself. Yeah. Remove judgment.
Which that takes work in and of itself.
That takes work in itself. And that's a whole podcast, right? Like Michael Gervais was on the show and he said, like, really, what is presence? Presence is the awareness of any moment without judgment. That is,
say that again, please.
Presence is the awareness of any moment without judgment.
So important.
So that's presence, right? And this is spoken from one of the leading psychologists in the world. So if he's saying it, and he's a spiritual man that also has deep roots in academia and works with professional athletes, I'm going to learn from him. I'm going to pause and take that in. You know? So when we start with that lens of awareness, then go to the mentors and the people in your space that you think are telling really good stories, and then go home and practice telling your story in a similar mirror of theirs. Yeah. And we all do it. Look, I'll be honest. Like when I first started, I would like listen to a mentor and kind of copy a little bit of what they were doing. And then over time, my story became an amalgam of all the mentors that I liked, and I would put it all into a page, And then when I had my come to Jesus moment in Vegas with my coach, I threw it all away because I had done so much practice that emotionally, spiritually, it came through where I just wrote it right there how I felt, who I am and what is my story. And right after that, I had my first speaking gig ever at Sean Croston's mastermind, the Underground Wellness Mastermind. And it's so funny, you were saying last week you had a speaking gig. The title of my speech was How to Speak Your Truth.
Oh, look at this.
So we're lined up here,
Oh, man.
And I talked about this core belief system. A lot of our story, Chase, and everyone knows this is true. A lot of our story is about forgetting beliefs that don't serve us anymore.
Yes, mic drop. Yes.
That's like everything for us. So in that speech, which I'll link it in our show notes because I think it's really beneficial, I became aware in my emotional intelligence work that I had 3 massive poisonous beliefs that came up from childhood.
What were they?
And they were, people can't be trusted, money causes pain, expect the worst to happen.
It's not some easy pills to swallow there, man.
No surprise, those beliefs caused a lot of stress in my system. But throwing them up in plant medicine, breathing them out in breath work, experiencing them through trainings like MITT, going to somatic experiencing, doing the shit, applying my awareness, that's what led me to the place of letting them go. And what's interesting is that if you look at Dr. Vernon Wolf and the holodynamics movement, and you think about what is a negative thought, what is a positive thought, they're energies.
Yeah.
There's negative energy in the world. There's positive energy in the world. This whole branch of science called holodynamics is so fascinating to me. I'm really digging into it.
That term's
right
new to me. I have to check that out.
I met with this guy in 2 hours in Arizona.
Holodynamics, okay.
It was unbelievable. I got to go to his house. It was almost like, that scene in The Matrix when he meets with the African-American woman and she's baking cookies?
Oh,
remember?
Yeah. What's her character's name? Oh, she's the gatekeeper, the key maker.
No, she's like the sage. Anyways, we all know. So somebody right now is shouting the answer out.
She's got that kid who's bending the. There is no spoon.
There's no spoon.
Yeah.
So I felt like I was
The
having
oracle.
Yes,
oracle,
exactly.
Yes.
I felt like I was seeing an oracle because this guy, he came in. I sat down and he said, "So what is time?" That was his first question. He's like, "So what is time?" And I was like, "Oh God, I'm in for an interesting conversation right now." But to bring it back, these 3 core beliefs, they're just positive and negative energies. And this is what I wanted to say: the majority of beliefs that we have, that we've done the awareness work to know aren't serving us, are actually not ours at all.
Nope.
They're not our beliefs at all. They're passed on from generation to generation. Think about when my grandfather came over here, or when my great grandfather came over here from Sicily. He came to a boat that entered a dock where he had a white chalk mark scraped on his chest, and he was told that he'd never amount to anything and that he actually had to change his name. Can you imagine the type of emotional scarring that came from that, which was then transferred to my grandfather, which then went through the Great Depression and World War II, which then my mother was born into that, and then I came from my mother. We are all, whether we're conscious or not, we are all borrowing beliefs about scarcity, poverty, negativity, anger, resentment, fear. They're all downloaded epigenetically. And if you look at the science on epigenetics, we're all born with certain characteristics. Those characteristics only turn off and on if we're in the right environment for them to turn off and on for.
Yeah, having the right person to flip the switch,
Having the right person to flip the switch. So the long-winded kind of fun story here, explanation, is that the core beliefs run everything. And there's a movie that I want everyone to watch. You get to watch this with your niece or your nephew or just with your wife or your husband. And it's called Inside Out. And
have you seen it? The Pixar movie, right?
The Pixar movie.
That was so
good.
deep.
So good.
I was like, this is a kid's movie? What the hell? There's some deep shit going on
It's
here.
such a great movie, man.
Yeah.
And that is literally the crux of what you and I are talking about is, are these beliefs yours? And if they're not, do you have the courage to push them aside?
Yeah.
Can you cultivate the courage with your community, with your podcasts, with your work, with who you are as a fucking human being, a divine human being that is brought here only once, forever. There'll never be another Chase Chewning. There'll never be another Josh Trent, ever. They won't exist. Can we honor that?
Yeah.
Can we honor that and can we move forward?
Which is scary. It's empowering, but it's scary. And this is where I think a lot of people can even get stuck in this. They get this far in the work, right? And once you get, this far in the self-development and the physical development, you're like, holy shit, like exactly what you just said, man. Like that's a lot. Like that can feel like a heavy responsibility, but don't quit there. Don't quit there.
Yeah, choose to not quit.
Absolutely. Right? And I will echo a lot of things you were just saying. And I'll remind my audience again here. They've definitely heard me say this before, that like, okay, cool, Chase, cool, Josh. Like you've been talking about your travels and your platforms and mentors and coaches and all of these things. And I think people too often forget nobody starts like that. Well, maybe you do. Maybe you immediately
some
hire
people
them.
do.
Yeah, some people do.
Some people start higher up on the mountain.
Here's exactly
at the bottom, my friend.
Absolutely. I was in a ditch at the bottom, I was like,
you were in a foxhole.
I was literally
in a foxhole.
Which is actually, it stings a little because that's how I got injured. I was in a foxhole, popped up, and that was my physical injuries.
Wow.
Yeah. So I was literally emotionally, spiritually in a foxhole. And that was the beginning of my work, man. But you didn't start at the top. I didn't start at the top. And people, listen right here, right now. Get a piece of paper. Do what I did. I walked to CVS from my apartment in Northern Virginia. I bought a $4 or $5 Mead journal and just started pouring I thought I was getting my thoughts out, but I was really pouring my heart out. I was spilling my soul and just anything and everything that I was feeling, all of my fears, all of my aspirations, all of the, I can't believe this person did this shit to me, to the like, I'm going to rule the world kind of one day. Just brain dump, heart dump, and then sort through it. And that was the beginning of my work. Coupled with, again, man, high five to you, man. Like literally finding podcasts, finding books, choosing to go seek these types of things out, finding Wellness Force. Like, okay, I can't travel across the world. I can't move. I can't buy this coach. I can't go to this seminar. You can write things down. You can type it on your phone. You can go to your phone and listen to free content like Josh. You can
listen to life-changing content for free.
Yes.
We have so many tools that our parents never had.
We
have zero excuses, my friend. Zero.
Yeah.
There's no excuses
now. You can prime now your personal development. Like I was saying earlier, we can get it now.
Exactly.
Okay, I can't go to this conference or whatever. Like, hop on your phone, hop on the computer. Hell, walk to Starbucks, look on the community board. There's got to be something there. Like, there's no excuse. Absolutely.
This has been amazing with you.
Likewise,
I have loved this conversation. Man, what a special energy exchange. What a unique electron transport you and I have had this afternoon.
Every time, but definitely today for sure.
Definitely today. Today was really special because I just have this sense that people have felt in their hearts, in their nervous system, and even in their mind for the analytical people. This conversation explored some really incredible topics, and the journey still continues. Like,
exactly.
We're still here, man. We've made it. If you're listening to this podcast, if you have breath in your lungs, if you have a roof over your head, if you have 3 meals a day or snacks, you are doing so much better than most people. And that is really the recipe for living our life well, dude, is perspective. And I know you have like a signature question on your show, and
yes,
so
sir,
do I.
yeah.
I'd love to trade this with you right now. If you were to encapsulate living life well, like really the meaning, the energy, the gravity behind it, how would you define wellness? Like, how do you see wellness in your life? What does that mean to you to live life well, to be well?
I'll kind of say like semi woo-woo, semi like real tangible stuff. Maybe just because I'm getting into my 30s and where I'm in life, but
you're doing more yoga too.
Oh my gosh, yes. My mind, my body needs it.
Yeah.
The only thing that matters is how did you love? How did you love? And that means how did you love your neighbor? How did you love yourself? Absolutely the most important thing. The only thing that matters is how did you love? And at the end of the day, that's all I want in my capsule. That's all I want in my wellness capsule. That's all. If I could define it in one word, it would be that. Because from that, like love with the gym, love with walking, love with my food, love with my significant other, love with myself. Most importantly, though, hands down, it's got to be it.
Yeah, it's so interesting. I was at a church last year, Michael Pollan, who wrote How to Change Your Mind. He was on Stephen Colbert talking about psychedelics and therapy.
That's in 2 books that's on my Audible list.
It's a really amazing book. And one thing he said that just imprinted for me forever, he said, the truth loves to hide in plain sight. And when the hippies said, love is all there is, the reason that those hippies were made fun of is because the truth is sometimes so simple and so powerful and so real and raw
that sometimes the emperor doesn't wear clothes. We all know the truth, but it's almost like we're afraid to just acknowledge it. So I don't care if you're an analytical or a spiritual person. What you just said applies scientifically and spiritually to everyone. So thank you, bro. I really felt that from you. And it's a testament to the work that you've done. And it's why it took us so long to be here to get this podcast rolling.
It took us the exact amount of time necessary.
Yeah, everything's divine timing.
Yeah, absolutely, man.
Yeah.
And again, I've said this before several times in this to you. Thank you for all the work that you have done, that you have continued to do. And like I said in the beginning, if you had quit, if you had stopped, if you had decided that this is too much work or it's getting too uncomfortable, I don't know if I would have kept going. I mean, who knows, maybe, but I don't know. And that is such a reminder. That's why it's so important to keep these mentors, these beacons, these guiding posts, guiding lights in your life, because as important as they are for you, they are also teaching you how to do that and be that for the people behind you. What is it? The rule of thirds in your life, right? Always keep a third of the people in your life above you in terms of like who you seek to learn from, and the third of the people at your level, so to speak. You can kind of have that community and fellowship, and a third of the people that are not behind you, but that you can also empower.
I like that. I've never heard that before.
Oh no, it's
the rule of thirds.
3 types of people to kind of keep in your life, and just always be at a place where you can be comfortable with the people, quote, at your level here, but also have the people that you're striving to be like, and just be on not their path, but a similar path, something that help keep you pushing forward. And then also it's just as important, I think maybe not even the most important, to have the people behind you that you need to help clear that path, and you can be that beacon and that lighthouse for, really. Yeah. Absolutely.
Wow, this is powerful, man. And I definitely feel like, with who listens to this podcast, they're going to move forward. And there's this question that you asked me, God, it was like 2 years ago, right?
Yeah.
How did you frame it? You were like,
the question we ask everybody,
what's your signature?
One is, how do you live a life ever forward? What does that mean to you? And hearing this conversation, and we've known each other for a couple of years now, and that that's the name, the brand, and my backstory and what it means to me. But in getting to know people, I just want to know, what does that mean to you? How do you live a life ever forward, Josh?
The only way that I think life can be lived forward is without the absence of being tethered to fear. In other words, the only way that I can live my life forward is by being able and having the courage and the strength to, at any moment, say no to something that I know isn't serving me. And I heard Tony Robbins say this a long time ago. And he said, what does everyone want? Everyone wants to live free. Everyone wants freedom. And what is freedom? Freedom is the ability and the capacity, the courage to say no to anything that doesn't align with my soul, that doesn't align with who I am. And so how do I see myself living a life ever forward? I see myself living a life ever forward by practicing the cultivation process of saying no to anything that doesn't serve my soul. That's living a life ever forward.
And if you want to know how to do that, go back and start this podcast over. All of those things.
That's right.
If it takes you 10 years or like me, 29 years, whatever, that's how you do it.
Yeah. Chase, absolutely. Thanks for today, brother. Love you, support you. Wellness Force is completely behind you.
Likewise, my man.
And everything that we talked about today is in the show notes on both of our shows.
Absolutely, yeah.
Just feeling really expanded.
It's been so fun, man.
Thanks so much for this beautiful conversation.
It's been amazing. Welcome, absolutely. Thank you for joining me, man.
Cool.
Holy shit. This is
Hey, thanks for listening to the show, my friend. Everything you learned on this podcast starts with your morning practices. So from over 300 world-class guests, we pulled together 6 simple yet powerful morning practices down into a 21-minute system, guaranteed to increase your vibration and the way that you feel every day. Get this free, powerful guide over at wellnessforce.com/M21. And if you love this show, share it with somebody. Share it with somebody that you love or that you care about. You can support the show easily by leaving us a 5-star review on iTunes. Just go to wellnessforce.com/review, or if you're on your phone, just tap it, hit the link in purple that says review this podcast. And the journey does not stop here. We're continuing this discovering process in our private Facebook group over at wellnessforce.com/group. You can be a part of it. You already are. All you have to do is join us at wellnessforce.com/group, and I will welcome you at the door. Now go out into your life and live your life well. And until I see you again real soon, I'm wishing you love and wellness.